The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all. All right, folks, we are here. It's election night coverage 2022, the midterms. I am your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And joining me in the control center is our correspondent on
control center. What the hell are we controlling?
Our correspondent on the scene, our election specialist, Robert Winfree. How do you do, sir?
I earned none of those titles, for the record. None.
It's been a while since we've done this. I was actually talking to Melissa, because we've never done it on StreamYard before. We did this for a couple of years, off and on.
Yeah, you and I did this for 2016.
Mm-hmm. I thought we did it before that too.
I don't think we did anything live before that. At least I didn't. I can't speak to what you may have done. But yeah, you and I did 2016. When, you know, the last election in American history, right?
Yes.
Because
okay.
Trump won.
Right. I remember that one. I remember that one distinctly, and we must have done that on like Google Chat or something, because that was the thing. It's like I needed graphics for StreamYard and everything, and so my wife was like, why are you looking so angrily at the computer? I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like I've never done this before. I'm trying to pick graphics and everything, because with Google Chat it was just whatever the background was.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did the Trump election. And what was fun about
that... the end of democracy, right?
Yeah.
Never another election in the history of the United States of America.
What was fun about that was this is, after 2 terms of Obama, 2 terms of Bush, and a lot of talk about like election fraud and stolen elections and things like that. And of course, yet another sort of Reagan-esque, nobody I knew was going to vote for Trump kind of a thing. Yeah. So, plus we have, the long storied history of cable news outlets calling elections and then having those calls questioned. So now no one calls anything. So you and I are like calling Florida.
Like hours before any major outlet called it.
Wolf Blitzer was like tearing his clothes asunder. Like nobody wanted to do anything. And we were there was
much rending of garments and gnashing of teeth and wailing.
Yeah. It really was. So that was hilarious. A fun one. I don't remember if we did 18 or not.
We did not do 18. We did 2020 when you had so many technical issues. You just kind of threw up your hands and said, go forth. And I was talking with Andrew at the time. So Andrew Graham and I have the 2020 coverage.
Right. And that was on Spreaker. So that was audio only, if I remember correctly. So yeah, we only did one video. We only did the one video. So here we are again. This is I guess our 3rd time doing this. Andrew is off in the wild hunting wild games, so he's not here to join us. But we have friends watching online on Twitter and Twitch.
Oh, do we?
YouTube. Yeah.
Hello, friends.
Yeah, Jason raising the ire of my father, yelling "red, red, red" on Twitch. So we're happy to have him here. All right, let's get into midterm elections. Who's going to control? Who's going to win Congress? What governorships are going to remain red, turn blue? Where are we going?
Turn red. Who knows?
Right. That's what we're looking at here, and that's what, as far as what Robert and I are going to do. I have Fox News up, which, by the way, I was on a date the other day, and I'm talking to another social worker in the poly community. Take a wild guess what their political affiliation was.
I imagine they were writing in Bernie Sanders for everything.
This is Ralph Nader.
Nader.
So anyway, so I said, I understand there's reticence to deal with anything Fox News for any number of reasons, but I said you got to understand something. I really did try to watch MSNBC, and I really did try to watch CNN. Look, even at some point, presentation matters. And those two have, in the 20-aught years that they've been a cable news outlet, have not figured out how to present the news in a way that isn't an eyesore.
I don't know how MSNBC still thinks trotting out Rachel Maddow constitutes.
Robert is frozen. There we go.
There we
go. You're back.
It's not me. That was you.
Oh, Well, somebody was frozen on some side. Go ahead.
Whatever. My joke there was, it shocks me that MSNBC still thinks that trotting out Rachel Maddow is the height of presentation for political commentary.
She's got her fans. Anyway,
allegedly.
All right, so go into your thing. What were you about to say?
All right, before we get into this, because unlike those jackasses, Mark and I have the ability to be honest. So, biases on the table. Mark lives in Florida. I live in Utah. Mark and I do not agree on everything politically. I am personally not party affiliated. I'm not a member of any political party, major or minor. My general worldview leans a bit more on the conservative side of things. Mark is a bit more representative of the average American. So what are your potential, what's coloring your perspective on this? I don't know, to be clear, let me preface, before I give you that one, I'm not rooting for anything here. I have no vote. I have no rooting interest.
Did you vote?
Yes.
Okay, I voted too.
Well, we have now signaled our virtue. Good night, everybody.
So I'm a registered Republican. Easy. I in the state of Florida, if you want to vote in the midterm, if you want to vote rather in the primaries, you have to have a you have to be the party that you're voting for. So
it's pretty common. And
yeah.
Again, I understand that. Not registered, not party affiliated. I don't get a say in primaries, and I'm okay with that. It makes entire sense to me that only people associated with a party should get to have a say in who is put forth to the general election.
So I like to participate in the primary election. Speaking of Florida, we got to start covering some of that because
we will.
Yeah, DeSantis is actually giving his acceptance speech now, but we'll get to that in a moment. So yeah, I am a registered Republican because I choose to vote in the Republican primary, and I can't if I register as an independent. I have some fairly progressive views on abortion, on drugs, on the death penalty. I have some more conservative views where family values are concerned. I work in the correctional health field, so I definitely have some concerted opinions on law enforcement. Some run counter to the law enforcement itself, and some are right in line with law enforcement. I tend to be at least a sympathetic ear when it comes to law enforcement side of things, just because I work with these people daily. So
you look at what's going on in like California or whatnot, and you just recoil in horror.
Yeah, I don't believe in defund the police. I can tell you that much. So, Robert and I, over the years of doing podcasts, we've definitely had our debates and discussions and disagreements over a variety of thematic sociopolitical issues. Again, as you said, we don't always agree, but we can at least have an intelligent conversation. As far as I voted a certain way. I certainly had my thoughts about who I should vote for and who I shouldn't, but ultimately, I'm not really rooting either. My my take on most political elections is ideally I'd like the best candidate to win, but the best candidate usually isn't running. As far as ideas go, the best ideas from either party works for me. I'm not really solely committed to one ideology.
Yeah, you can't.
With that said, let's talk about Florida.
You can't trust anyone who actively seeks public office. It's a bad indicator of their personality.
Yeah. All right. So it looks like in Florida right now, Marco Rubio won his Senate race against Val Demings. I've got the New York Times up right now with
let's just go with DeSantis here because the man won by over 1 million votes.
Yeah. Looking at the results here, going down to governor, Ron DeSantis beat Charlie Crist 59.1 to 40.3 with 86% of the votes in. Yeah, this was an early night for Florida. It's funny. So, I put my dad on TikTok, and my dad rants and raves, and he does his thing, and I do it because I find it amusing, but also his stuff tends to get a lot of views on TikTok. And
political stuff. Look, if you're not a big brand on TikTok, then political stuff is a cheap and easy way to gain traction.
Right, and I'm nothing if not cheap and easy, especially when it comes to content. So I will put my father on there saying any kinds of stupid shit just because it gets me the hits that I want. So, but I'll tell you, folks that I work with, had questions for him. It's if DeSantis is so bad, why are polls showing him beating Chris by 10 points? That's a question they wanted me to ask him, but I think it's an interesting one to sort of kick around for a moment, especially in light of the fact that DeSantis slaughtered Chris in this race. If I think a little ways back, my dad put like a TikTok out there. He was referring to him as like Ron Death Santis, and that was because of the COVID stuff. But that doesn't seem to have that doesn't seem to have resonated with people. Like the people of Florida seem to have accepted and appreciated his handling of COVID and voted in kind. And I think the other thing about this is the interesting thing, and you brought this up in our chat right before we went live, is that he did really well in a traditionally blue area, Miami-Dade.
A few different ones, actually, yeah. There's a few precincts that are traditionally a lot bluer that flopped for good old DeSantis there. And yeah, look, people appreciated how he handled COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Much as I appreciate that we live in a political society now where you try to meme everything, you're not going to get Death Santis over when we all saw what happened in New York.
Yeah, sure.
Like, that ain't happening, buddy. I appreciate that you may not have been happy with his leadership and his decisions, and I respect that. But he wasn't Andrew Cuomo shoving sick people into nursing homes.
I don't want to get too much on a tangent about COVID. I don't feel like this is the place for that. But I will.
Well, hang on. We have to talk about it for a fairly specific reason.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at MSNBC or CNN,
mm-hmm.
when these poor schmucks are desperately trying to explain why are people voting red, the response you're getting is a lot of, well, we're dealing with post-COVID trauma. I'm not kidding.
Here's what I'm going to tell you.
I wish I was.
Related to specifically the handling of COVID, there was anecdotally, I mean, I'm not sitting here with stats in front of me, but just from being around and talking to people, there was there were essentially two camps here in Florida. There was the lock everything down, separate everyone from everybody, don't leave your house camp. And these people were desperately afraid of being sick and dying. And certainly before the vaccine, it was a very real fear. This was killing people.
It killed a lot of people.
So so for those people who feared death by COVID, they wanted DeSantis to do more. They felt like we opened up too early. We felt like those people felt like
got a Freudian slip from you there?
Not necessarily. The loosening of the reins and the allowing of more social contact so early on after the lockdown, because I'll tell you, the lockdown happened in Florida from about March to June. By June, we were just starting to slightly open up again. There were a couple of things here and there that were open. By, I think, like September, the kids were back in school.
Thankfully. Man, have you not, not to derail this, but have you seen some of the horror stories that are coming out about what the places that have kept kids on remote learning for almost 2 years now have done?
Yeah, we've created feral children. I'm well aware of that.
I mean, your children are feral, more honestly.
Shut up. No, I mean, but you're bringing up a really good point. You couldn't help but do the remote learning in the beginning, but some stayed on remote learning too long. There's a social retardation that has happened. There's an emotional retardation that has happened among our children, and we're still dealing with that.
And we have lost Mark. I assume there was some kind of power-related issue, so instead we will just deal with me for a little bit here till Mark's able to return. So, talking about COVID. Wait, is Mark back? He is loading. He is loading. In theory, he will be up shortly. There's Mark.
I was just saying, would it be too much to ask for StreamYard to not crash while we're using it?
That was, and again, I didn't have a problem with that, so I don't know what's up on your end.
Yeah, it was the second time, and Sunday too. It crashed while I was doing the Metal Hammer of Doom. But anyway, what has happened, and what they're still dealing with, kids that because they were on remote learning so young and for so long, cannot operate in a classroom. Yeah, they're still dealing with that.
I mean, there's a bunch that were going into college now who can't operate at the collegiate academic level because some of the stuff from your senior year and whatnot that you're supposed to get that transitions you in that respect is just not there. Like they don't know how to read academic papers. They don't know how to write at that level, that kind of thing. And it's
the studies that are going to come out of what happened in lockdown, the statistics that'll be gathered from shorter lockdowns versus longer lockdowns, and the psychodynamic effect that it has on the population. So many books, so many papers. Like we're in for years of study on this and how it, the trauma it caused. But so you had the people who were like, they were anti-DeSantis, the Death Santis people. They were like, we should have had a longer lockdown. I think we actually stayed at a resort in July of that year. Like that, we were actively vacationing in Florida, shortly thereafter. Meanwhile, like I think like in New York, their lockdown lasted months, much longer than Florida.
Cali was locked down forever. Some places in Cali are still like, oh no, there's a new variant.
Well, so you and I cover the box office. We cover weekly movies, and if you'll remember, by September the movies were back open again. Like I saw Tenet in the theater. I saw New Mutants in the theater. God help
me. You and me both, buddy. One of those was a great viewing experience. One of those was almost four-stick.
Godzilla versus King Kong just got in at the wire, if you'll recall.
Yeah.
I think like California and New York opened up that weekend. That was March of 2021. So you still had theater lockdowns in a lot of the country, like well into well past 2020 into 2021.
Again, like we're talking like 6 to 8 months after the origination of lockdowns. You still had places that were just shut down.
Now you have the other side. You have you have the freedom people here in Florida who didn't want to be locked down. Were not afraid to die of COVID. These may have also been the same people who didn't want the vaccine. I don't have stats in front of me.
I imagine there's at least some overlap on the Venn diagram. Just
of people actively rejecting science. That's whatever, my body, my choice. But
well, you interestingly bring up the hypocrisy of that point, though, don't you?
Yes, sir. Boy, does that not work for everybody, for every issue, all the time. But yeah, you had the people that were very much cheering on DeSantis because they did not want to be locked in their house. They were not afraid to die of COVID, and were very much like, can we move this on already? Let's go. And I think you're seeing the benefit of that. The other thing I wanted to bring up, and you and I talked about this in our group chat, was I work with Hispanic law enforcement, and a lot of them are like pro DeSantis because the Democrats actively courting Cuba, and the people living in America going, no, this is bad. We should not be doing that. And between the Democrats' almost wholesale rejection of religious value, and the courting of Cuba and whatnot, you have a lot of Hispanics migrating, as it were, towards the Republican Party because they're right or wrong, they're finding that their values are validated seemingly by the Republican Party.
There's a couple of things that the Democrats have done, if we want to talk very, very broadly here.
Yes.
One is they tried to make this cycle about the imminent threat to democracy. For those of you using the video application in the upper right-hand corner of a screen, is my response to that. Because again, everyone was sure, Trump wins, there'll never be another election.
Yeah.
And yet, here we are.
Here we are. 2 of them since then.
A whole 2 of them, Mark. Wow.
Yep. And one of them, a Democrat won. One completely, one totally, one legally.
Yeah. Look.
Can we not be those people?
We're not those people. No one here is contesting the results of the 2020 presidential election. My general thought, if you want it, on that was there was no more chicanery in that one than in any other one in the last 30 years. Which is not to say there was no chicanery, but it was not out of line with everything that had come previously and that we all ruled as fair. So again, fair play. But they've tried to make this about, again, the existential threat to democracy. and abortion. And here's the kind of reality about this. Most people don't care. Oh no, Roe v. Wade was overturned. You know what? Most people don't care. This is that might shock and offend some people, but most people do not care. In fact, when you kind of dig down into brass tacks on Roe v. Wade as a bit of jurisprudence, one, it was terrible jurisprudence. Whatever your opinion on abortion as a matter of law, Roe v. Wade was bad jurisprudence. And most people are willing to entertain, okay, so let's legislate. So let's have the state decide, and this should be a state thing, my opinion, what our abortion laws look like. That doesn't seem unreasonable to most people. So they don't actually care all that much. They care about inflation. They care about wage stagnation. They care about how much they're paying for gas. And they care about how much they're having to pay for groceries. And the Democrats, broadly speaking, have said nothing about this other than parrot whoever's responsible for Joe Biden's Twitter account has put out.
So the law enforcement asked my father to talk about the economy, and he did a whole TikTok on it. And he was like, "If you value your wallet, if you want to take care of your family, vote blue, not red, because Republicans want everyone but corporations." I think is what he said. Want everyone but the corporations to pay taxes. Okay. Whereas the Democrats. Go ahead.
I did not respond to this particular rant from your father for a very specific reason.
Oh, you actually saw it? You saw his one on the economy?
No, but I heard you, and I heard other people react to it. And I went, you know what? I don't need that aneurysm today. Thank you very much.
I can put it on the screen if you want.
Please don't. Here's my comical response to that. Your father's dealing with wildly outdated information if he thinks that the Republican Party is the party of big business. It's not anymore. It was. Mm-hmm. It is not anymore. Who courts big tech companies? Where do they lean?
Democrats.
Where do all... When industry was king, then industry tended to lean towards the right for a variety of reasons. Mm-hmm. When technology is more king, especially the kind of technology we have now, it leans to the left. Every major tech company, Amazon, Google, Netflix, Twitter, etc., if you look at the disclosed financial contributions to political parties, they are comically blue. If we're talking ratios, again, comically. Mm-hmm. The notion that the Republican Party is the party of big business, and that the Republicans don't want business to pay taxes, etc., it's outdated. It's an old talking point. It's no longer true.
Okay. Let me jump in here real quick. Let's do some stats.
Let's.
Ron DeSantis with 87% of the votes in per the New York Times and NPR. Handily won. He's already done his acceptance. We covered this already.
Again, he's going to win by well over 1 million votes.
We talked about Marco Rubio already. Right now, the U.S. House in Florida looks like all red.
The Republicans picked up 3 seats. I know that. I don't know how much has been retained or whatnot, but I know they flipped at least one of those, and one of them was empty.
Yeah. So it looks like there were 5. Okay.
Dude, the Republicans are poised to pick up a House seat in Rhode Island.
Okay. That's what this is. I think this was all Florida. All right, so the U.S. House, your winners were, mostly Republicans here. You had a few Democrats win. Not a lot, though. It's mostly Republicans. State legislature, you have Trumbull, who won, Yarborough, who won. State House, it's all red. The 3 of them were uncontested. So, Florida, solidly red. The Attorney General, red. Bright red. Not even a little purple. As far as where we are nationally right now, in the Senate, via the Associated Press, we have 39 for the Democrats. We have 40 for the GOP. We need 51 for a majority. Currently, we have North Dakota, we have John Hoeven, who beat Katrina, whatever the hell her name is. In South Dakota, you have John Thune, who won.
Neither of those are very surprising.
In Kansas,
look, the Senate races people are going to be paying attention to are primarily Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Texas.
Right, so let's talk about that. Georgia currently leaning blue with 58% of the precincts reporting in. You have Raphael Warner currently slightly beating Herschel Walker.
That's going to be a lot closer than it should. Like if you look at most projections for the state of Georgia, anytime the Republican is within like 3 points after you count the early ballots, like that's usually a good sign for them.
In Pennsylvania, we are also leaning blue with 17%.
Those poor people in Pennsylvania, man, you're choosing between two utter incompetent buffoons.
We have John Fetterman with 60% of the vote to Mehmet Oz is 37.1% of the vote. Again, with 17% in.
Yeah, so there's a long ways to go in those.
Yeah. What's the other race we're looking at?
I think the Senate seat in Texas is another one.
Okay, the polls aren't even closed in Texas yet, it looks like. All right, so that's the Senate. In the House, we have 42 for the Dems, 74 for the GOP, with 200, with the majority needed of 218. And
again, I mentioned this. Like, there's actually one of the House seats in Rhode Island that's about to flip for the Republicans, which is nuts. Like that's not a sane outcome.
Well, I think in one of my charts here, Christ, one of my charts, I was looking for. Damn it. Is it shows you what the pickups are? I'm trying to find that again. You can talk while I'm doing this while I struggle with getting. I've like expanded my screen. It's like taking up my entire computer now. I'm like, God damn it! I didn't want this. All
right. I'll try to fill the airspace as you struggle with your unintuitive UI.
I got it. Fine. It's fine. Everything's fine.
You know what? I heard this expressed recently, and I think it's true. When a man says everything's fine, he means it's not fine, but he will be if you leave him alone.
That's accurate.
You know what? That's very true. So we're looking at those seats. Virginia seems to be a little bit up in the air as well. But I mean, I can speak a little bit to the Senate race here in my home state, where the incumbent is Mike Lee. He's not really being challenged by a Democrat in any kind of meaningful capacity. The big challenge for him comes from a theoretical independent by the name of Evan McMullen, who actually ran for president in 2016. Unlike 4 states, as a never Trump conservative to try and siphon votes away from Donald Trump, which again ultimately did not work. But this is his big claim to fame. He's running under a third party. I forget which one. It might be the UUP.
I'm on Politico.com. Some other races they're saying to watch are the governor's race in Arizona, the senator's race in Nevada.
Nevada's turning like crazy thing about Nevada. Nevada looks to be going red this time around.
It went blue, I think, in the last election. Like there was I think from what I remember, definitely during the Trump Biden election, there were a lot of states that the pundits were saying, "Oh no, they'll stay red," and they turned blue. Like it was not like a bloodbath, but I remember the GOP definitely took some bruises on that election.
There were a lot of places that, again, they did not swing by much, but you don't need much.
Yeah,
you really don't need much.
So we have a senator's race in Wisconsin, New Hampshire, governor's race in Michigan, Wisconsin, and a district race in California. We got a couple of them here. So at 10 o'clock, polls close in 40 states. It'll be Arizona, Montana, Nevada, Utah, Idaho, or in Oregon. So we're going to stay with you until 11 o'clock.
For at least the next 30 minutes.
We'll do the full 2-hour Damn You Hollywood run here. But yeah, at 11 o'clock, wherever we are, I'm tapping out.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I remember when we didn't have a time limit on this, and we just stayed up all night.
Well, we also stayed up because no one would call anything, and we were very frustrated with that by the end of it.
With 100% of the precincts reporting in, it's too close to call. Like, come on, you sons of bitches.
No, some of the Arizona races are pretty close. There's already lawsuits in both Georgia and Arizona, which is not terribly surprising. The Georgia gubernatorial race is getting a little bit of play because for some reason people in the Democratic Party think Stacey Abrams isn't terrible. She's currently losing with like 66% of the precincts reporting in. That is leaning towards Brian Kemp. The Texas gubernatorial race is between Greg Abbott and Greg Abbott and Beto O'Rourke. And I don't know, Beto's another guy that I don't know why they keep running. Like, I genuinely don't know. Like, he's not a good candidate. But he's out there, and that seems to be a thing. So Beto can lose again. Which is my hunch, but Texas has become a lot more of a swing state than it used to be. This is, if we don't mind, a slightly broader discussion about the American political system. Don't know what race that is, but Oklahoma is leaning red for. Again, I'm not sure if that's a Senate seat or whatnot, but so I'm looking at another feed. Don't worry about it. There's always, especially when the Democrats lose, there's always this count every vote thing. We should abolish the Electoral College. We should go to a pure democracy, and I always want to put my head through a wall because I don't think there's too many things that would set this country irrevocably on a path to civil war. I don't. I'm not an alarmist like that. I think abolishing the Electoral College would do it, though. Not right away, but again, like if you want to take a slightly long view of history, like what was the turning point? I believe that would be it. Because swing states change, Mark. For a big part of my life, and I'm sure a big part of yours, Florida was a swing state.
Absolutely.
Not so much anymore. Not the last 2 elections. Virginia's become a swing state. That didn't used to be anything approximating a swing state. Ohio used to be a lot more important than it is now. I just mentioned Texas is becoming a lot more swingy than it used to be because people leaving California in particular are moving to Texas, and well, they're doing damage.
Here, I want to read. So I got this NBCnews.com from their political blog. I think this is interesting. I want to get your opinion on it because I was telling my wife, you and I decided because there was no good movies last weekend, nothing really streaming, nothing that really tickled our fancy, that instead we would dedicate this night to doing election coverage.
Yep.
And I said, but because I'm social, I haven't been following the news like I should be. So it's kind of going into this, like, thank God, like, you pay attention because, I'm kind of here to read. I'm here to interact and read charts essentially because I don't know a lot of what's going on. And I was like, so I'm not entirely sure what to talk about tonight. And she was like, really? Because a lot of people are motivated to vote because of abortion laws.
Again, that's the theory. That's not true.
So I have this article here. Abortion rights motivated these California Latinas to vote. Santa Ana. This is written by Edwin Flores, again, on NBC News. Jackie Padilla, 25, a freshman majoring in journalism and photography at Santa Ana College, says she's motivated to vote to protect her right to abortion and reproductive health. Well, can I finish the sentence?
Well, let me make a guess. Every one of these people being cited is under the age of 40.
She was casting a vote for Proposition 1, which adds the right to abortion and contraceptive use in the state constitution. I'm not going to continue to read more of that, but I do, there's a Democrat, Hakeem Jeffries to New York, wins re-election.
Not terribly surprising.
Yeah. I do wonder, based on what my wife was saying, how many people, where there are abortion bills being voted on or whatever, I'm wondering how many people are that motivated them to actively vote. Because again, an article like that is immediately suspicious to me, that they focused on like one person and from that extrapolated this big general statement. Like, really, where's your stats? Where's your data to back that up?
Yeah, again, I mentioned it kind of at the top. The Democrats want to run. They wanted to make this about abortion. They wanted to make this about an existential threat to democracy.
Mm-mm.
And it turns out most people don't care. Most people care a lot more about their immediate issues and the sort of worrying trend that the Democrats seem to be on. The institution of the Democratic Party. This is not. I'm going to phrase it like that because this is not true of every Democrat. I know plenty of people on the political left. Theoretically, some of them are watching. If so, hi. We know you and I both know people on the political left. So what I'm about to say is not true of all of them. But if you look at the institution, again, the Democratic Party, the machinery that makes the corrupt thing run, and to be clear, the GOP is every bit as corrupt as the Democratic Party when you look at the machinery of the party. They are embracing positions that are profoundly unpopular amongst the vast majority of the country. The vast majority of the country does not like. People always say, well, look at this data. The majority of Americans don't want to overturn Roe v. Wade. Well, the majority of Americans don't have a say in that because it was Supreme Court fiat, which it never should have been in the first place.
Okay, I found the chart I was looking for, by the way. That entire time that we were like talking,
okay.
I was flipping to literally first thing I was on. I just went back to it. I'm like, oh, there it is. Duh.
So there's that. But if you drill down into the nuance of abortion, and abortion is a nuanced subject, whatever your stance on it happens to be, there's gradations here. And it's a much more nuanced topic than, well, should Roe v. Wade still be in effect or not? And it's badly aggregated data. When you drill down on it, most people have a much more conservative view than the Democratic institution assumes.
Despite what social media and mainstream media would have you believe, we're still a center-right country, which I struggle with in only this sense that for most people, they do vote with their wallet. When they're doing well, they tend to want to keep things the same. Like, people may not be politically conservative, but they are definitely emotionally conservative. If they're doing well, they want to keep things as they are. They reelect the people that they think are doing right by them. If things are going badly, if they're struggling financially, they tend to just want to vote change.
Well, when it comes to, I heard this recently about the American electorate,
and they don't necessarily even vote party. They're convinced to just vote you in because they're not doing well, and they think somebody else, new blood in that position, might help them. That's generally the guiding principle for most voters. They tend to not necessarily vote. Yeah, they tend to not necessarily vote on like single thematic items. Like,
it's very rare.
Yes, it's
very rare to find a one issue voter.
Right. So yes, people who are for guns, and less gun control tend to vote Republican. But can you convince them to vote for the local Democrat if the local Democrat isn't threatening to take away their guns and they're not doing well under the current Republican? Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's how swing states work, by the way.
Pretty much. Yeah. I heard this about the American electorate recently, and I think it's true. The majority of elections, not everyone, but majority, the American people don't vote for things; they vote against them.
Yeah. All right.
I mean, so the last kind of quasi-aspirational election in the United States was the first term for Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
The people voting for Obama were voting for Obama, not necessarily voting against John McCain. When you get to Trump and Hillary, everyone voting is, I don't care what side of that aisle you were on. I didn't vote for either of them, for the record. But your vote was less, I like X, and more, screw the other guy.
Yeah, I don't like Y. I want to actually do some statistics here.
Please.
So, all right. So the Senate results. I said before, we're at 39 Dems, 40 GOP. Republicans have won 11 seats. Democrats have won 5. And there are 29 and 34, respectively, no election at all, and 2 from other parties. So that's where we stand now, and that'll get updated momentarily in 20 minutes or so when the polls close again. In the House, excuse me, we're at 46 to 77 Dems to GOP. In the Republican Party, they won 77 seats with a gain of 2 seats. Democrats have lost 3 seats with 46 seats won. So right now, reminds me of, I want to say, the 2004 election where the Republicans, it was a bloodbath. Republicans won everything, and Jon Stewart was kind of joking around about it on the Daily Show, where it's like they won the House, they won the Senate, they won the presidency, they won the Israeli Knesset, they won everything. You know,
it was about like that. Had a sense of humor.
Yeah, exactly. Oops. Let's see here.
Yeah, I mean, look, anyone with half a brain who made a kind of predictive model about this was things were going to swing towards the this is a large trend in American politics. If you have the White House at the major election, by the midterms, you tend to lose the other governing bodies. The American people kind of like that. We kind of like when things are, well, historically at least,
balanced,
oppositional, right? Like
yeah.
That tends to be better, I think, for a lot of us.
You know, it was interesting because, you know, I don't think they want one party completely in control. I think that gives rise to a lot of like graft and
yeah, it's terrible. Look at any of the major states that are falling apart, or major states or major cities that are falling apart. And this is, again, let me be very clear with what I'm about to say. This is not a political sentiment in the sense that you might think it is, but any of the ones that are falling apart are usually historically one party. And I don't mean that's not me saying look at what all this Democratic rule by the Democratic Party does to states. It can, if you give them enough time. And like, look what they're doing to California. California is a mess. There are red states that are historically red states that are struggling just as much in very different ways. But anytime you have essentially one party control, it tends to go badly. You need the opposition.
Yeah. I think, you know, if I can relate this to what our discussions of film, especially as of late, where there is collaboration, the product ends up being better. When it's one man's vision unquestioned, tends to be crap.
It's very rare that you get a singular vision that isn't crap. It's very rare. But again, it can happen.
All right.
So to anyone watching, if you feel like chiming in here, please don't hesitate to leave a comment. We will put it on screen. We will have it. If you have questions, comments, leave them up. We will get to them.
Yep. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, Twitch, fortunately, if you're watching on Twitter, I can't help you. But for the rest of you, if you have a comment or whatever, we're happy to. If you have a question, we're happy to answer it or put your comment on screen. Moving over to the governor results, the Republicans actually lost 2. They have 17 total, 9 seats won, no elections, 8. The Democrats picked up 2 seats. They won 4. Total seats 10. They won 4. So not doing as well with the governorships there, the GOP, but you know.
Well, a few of those aren't terribly
not
surprising.
Matter. Yeah.
Well, it matters, but it doesn't matter nationally. Like that matters very much to your state. The governor of your state is significantly more important to your life as a general rule than the president.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something you need to pay attention to. But again, a few of those are not terribly surprising. Some of those were like empty seats that were coming in being contested. So again, not terribly shocking there. And a lot of those were like, again, you get a lot of states, a lot of the more intelligent states, as a general rule, they tend to flip-flop. Like you very rarely see a state that has had a Democratic governor for however many years or a Republican governor for however many years. That tends to be a bit rarer.
Just looking at some of these ballot measures. Alabama Amendment 1 expands criminal charges where bail can be denied. Almost 80%, with 8% reporting in voted yes on that.
I can't imagine why a state would be looking at other states that are, revoking, cash bail and whatnot, and going, yeah, sure, we'll just release people back into the wild if they commit crimes and whatnot, and have decided, you know what? How about we just make it harder to get bail to begin with? So everyone will be Everyone will be incarcerated for longer.
Let's see. Connecticut's trying to legalize early voting, and that was 58% yes with 9% reporting.
I don't know how that's going to work out in Connecticut. I mean, it's a small enough state; it might not matter that much, but as a matter of discussion, I don't know.
Not a lot of sexy stuff here in Georgia.
Look again. Raphael Warnock seems to be. We're up to like 71% precinct reporting. It's still close with Walker, but it seems to be leaning towards him.
I mean, just as far as the ballot measures go.
Yeah, ballot measures, I imagine, is nothing terribly interesting. I mean, there was only one measure, I think, in mine, and that was about appropriations. So,
yeah, not a whole lot here in Maryland.
Indiana's.
Hey. Maryland's legalizing marijuana, 64%. Looks like that has passed. Woo! Yay!
I'm sure David Simon is over the moon. Indiana seems to be leaning red for a couple of its major relevant elections. Iowa's close. We only have 15% of precincts reporting, so Iowa is Iowa. Iowa's been swingy for a long time. But yeah, there's a couple of those House seats that like Republicans are kind of poised to pick up that are very surprising. They're coming from very historically blue areas. And I think a lot of it, again, it tends to express how, I don't know, and to the extent that I'm going to talk broadly here, the Democrats kind of did this to themselves with some of the stuff they've attached themselves to. And again, the lack of messaging at the moment has been a real problem for them. Republicans have tactically been able to go, ooh, North Carolina's close on that one. We're up to 77%, leaning red. Ohio's pretty close. Yeah, some of these are going to be close. But there's a real disconnect. And I mean, the Republicans haven't even been great about capitalizing on it. Mostly what they're doing is, boy, don't things suck right now. And a lot of people going, yeah, they kind of do. Like they haven't. It's actually been a bit disappointing if you're a homer for the Republican Party. Like there's plenty of opportunities here to actually build a good narrative. And sadly, they have not capitalized on it, again, if that's your political leaning. Let's see. Pennsylvania, the Senate seat is still leaning pretty heavily towards John Fetterman, who, I mean, I feel bad for the guy. He had a stroke not too long ago. But again, I feel bad for, I know people in Pennsylvania, and if you feel your choice is between Dr. Oz, that huckster snake oil salesman, and John Fetterman, who had a stroke recently, and then his campaign covered it up to no significant pushback, mind you, because the media is the media. I feel bad for you if you're trying to choose between those two turkeys. That's just unfortunate. That's just bad luck, man. Choose between Fetterman and Oz, like, no.
Yeah, would you rather be shot or
okay.
stabbed?
Georgia's swinging a bit more towards Brian Kemp in the gubernatorial side of things. We're up to 72% of precincts reporting, leaning Kemp, somewhere in the neighborhood of like 55, 53%.
We have some movement in the House. We're at 47 to 82, and the GOP has gained 2 seats. Democrats have lost 3.
Do you know which 2 they gained? I hope the interactive map can tell you that, because if not, I apologize for asking.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Looking at Real Clear Politics.
Maine, yeah, it's not terribly surprising. Maine's a little bit purple, but it does tend to lean blue as a general rule. Like Maine depends on which county you're in, which of the relevant counties you're in, actually, districts rather, not counties. Michigan, 13%. That's still relatively close at only 13% reporting in. This would be the gubernatorial election between Gretchen Whitmer and Tudor Dixon. I think that'll probably wind up going to Whitmer. I think that's kind of the general projection. But again, if you're flipping Michigan to be that close, that says something. Minnesota leaning red. I mean, again, that's very, very early. That's like barely any precincts reporting.
Arizona District 9 is a GOP pickup.
Nice. Yeah, Arizona's a weird one, man, because again, Arizona swings a lot, but they seem to be leaning red this time around. The
Florida District 13 was a GOP pickup.
I believe I mentioned that earlier with Florida. Yeah, so
yeah, Florida District 21 is a GOP pickup. District 5 was a GOP pickup that was actually uncontested. Florida District 7 was a GOP pickup. And then finally, again, Georgia District 6 is a GOP pickup.
Florida, very bright red at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we have one for Georgia that's been called. All right. Again, Georgia's a big enough state that the different districts will vary pretty wildly there in some respects. But Arizona, I think, the Dems are gonna hurt in Arizona at the moment because again, the kind of like anti-crime,
looks like
there is hurting a lot.
There's a Michigan pickup, District 9, not to be confused with the movie.
Oh, that poor movie. I like the movie, but that director was cursed by having a very successful first kind of major film.
Yeah. That's where we stand right now with the House.
Him. So again, the House, any reasonable person was thinking this is going to tip red. Like that. Poor Nancy Pelosi lost the one thing and is going to lose the one thing in the world she dearly loves, her political position.
So it looks like where the Senate is concerned, not a lot of pickups here. It's all hold as near as I can tell.
Yeah, the Senate's going to hold. The Senate's going to hold a lot more than I think it's not going to hold. Again, there's a few races that might wind up being close, but some of the timing out for different elections this cycle actually it favors a lot more parity. There's some places that.
We had a switch to blue from Maryland, switch to blue in for Massachusetts, where Democrats picked up those governorships.
Not surprising.
No.
I mean, the Republican who won in Maryland like 4 years ago was a bit of a surprise. But again, also not shocking considering the state of Maryland.
Yeah, well, and that's what when I read that, I was like, wait, the Democrats picked up Massachusetts. How'd you lose it in the first place?
Well, Massachusetts is weird because they will go back and forth. Again, if you'll remember, Mitt Romney.
Fox News just called South Dakota governor's race for the Republican.
Not terribly surprising.
No, not surprising at all.
My point about Massachusetts, if you'll remember, Mitt Romney was the governor of Massachusetts for a little bit of time. There, that was one of his political claims to fame. And he was a Republican when he was the governor of Massachusetts. He was a moderate Republican, but he was a Republican. So there's plenty of wiggle room in Massachusetts in particular. Again, you've got to be a more center Republican as opposed to a more hardliner, but you can do that. Massachusetts will go that way.
All right. So as we are almost at 10 o'clock here on the East Coast, down here in Florida, which means we're going to have polls closing. Excuse me. We have the next round of polls closing in about 7 minutes. So things will get exciting in just a few minutes. So in the meantime, one of the things that came up between like my dad and the sheriff's office is their ongoing feud.
As you are relaying messages to one another.
I'm like a girl in like class. I keep passing notes between these two really hostile forces. Yep. But they asked my dad a legitimate question. Like, what do you think if the Republicans are able to take over Congress? What do you think they'll accomplish?
I imagine not much. There's a few. Well, look, which is to say the following. I actually prefer the federal government, do very little. Mm-hmm. Like that is my general thought on what the role of the federal government should be. It should be very limited.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About how this is mainly a commentary about conservatives. Only that they tend to want no government involvement unless it's something that they think. And this is anecdotal. Don't get me wrong. It's a very broad general statement I'm about to make. Right. So there's some wiggle room for discussion. But in my discussions with people who consider themselves to be conservative, They tend to want no government intervention because they like their freedom of choice, whether it be guns or abortion or whatever, or guns rather. But when it's something they don't like, suddenly they want government intervention. And it's frustrating because you can't have it both ways. You want a minimalist federal government. You want to go back all the way to the 20s. I'm with you, but you're going to have to give up some things.
When you talk to those people, and this is an important thing to do with those people, mostly because I partially consider myself one of them. If they say they're for more limited government, you need to ask them, okay, what do you think the federal government should do? And then as long as they're consistent within that framework, then you're okay.
Right. When you think about, though, FDR's not the Great Society, that was
New Deal.
Johnson. New Deal. When you think about the New Deal and you think about the Great Society, there were these wild philosophical thoughts about government intervention in the everyday lives of people.
Pretty terrible.
In the everyday lives of people, so as to not create Brazilian level poverty.
Okay, that's my issue with the Great. I have less issues with the New Deal than I do with the Great Society, for the record. If we want to talk about my view of historical policy, the New Deal is a bit of a dicey proposition, but I kind of accept that FDR was in a position that no one had been in before. And while I might disagree with some of his choices and policies and whatnot, he was in a position where he had to do something. And I think he was very fortunate to be bailed out by World War II.
Well, of course, that's my father recognizes that what ended the Great Depression was the war, not really anything the New Deal did. But it was a very similar position where Obama was in when he came in 2008 after the crash with the stimulus package, which was this may or may not help, but at least it's doing something. By the way, all of these banks and all the bankers who orchestrated this calamity, here, take money, just take it, Too big to fail. Anyway, my point being that
hypothetically,
I think there's room for a discussion about federal government intervention in the everyday lives of people. I think there's room for discussion into where the government needs to step in to prevent graft and corruption in industry.
Yeah.
But kind of like when we were talking about masculinity versus toxic masculinity, I'm not entirely sure anyone agrees on what any of that should be. And I'm making like the broadest of statements here. I think there's room for a discussion. I can't go beyond that, unfortunately.
You're not wrong at all, for the record. Mm-hmm. Like, you're not wrong at all when you mention that.
But
this is one of the things about, again, if we want to talk about Republicans very briefly,
mm-hmm.
they tend to support the free market. And this has led to the claims of, well, it means they're in bed with big business. And I'm not saying that was never true. I'm not even saying it's not true now. There's plenty of entities and businesses that lobby on behalf, that lobby the Republicans and whatnot. But the genuine people who believe in the free market also understand that means you have to protect the free market. And that means, again, areas of regulation, areas of making sure that the market is not suppressed by forces within the market that are acting.
But let's talk about drugs now.
All right.
There was a call among some to limit the use of abused drugs, recreational drugs, and it blossomed to what we have today, the drug war, to where there is a lot of data shows the sort of futility of the drug war. There's a lot of movement towards the slow decriminalization of drugs. There's discussion that we're now having discussions that were abandoned 40, 50 years ago about the uses of some illicit substances, particularly psychedelics, in mental health treatment.
Yeah, there was a pretty massive overcorrection there.
So my point being, I think I can't deal with the people who make the broad statement of we need less government. Where are you talking about? Because I don't really want to go back to the jungle years, okay, where we're putting sawdust in the sausage. On the other hand, I don't want to also go back to let's make all the drugs illegal and put all the users in prison, because that doesn't work either. And it's one of those things where anytime I have this discussion with people, whether it be abortion, gun control, drugs, use of military power, military funding, etc., it's like all of these things have to be considered individually.
Yeah.
The propensity for the average person to paint with a broad brush. So, for example, again, I work with law enforcement. Law enforcement tends to be very conservative. When you ask them about, and in most cases, when you ask them about like what do they believe, they're pretty checkmark with a lot of stuff, unless it affects them personally or it affects a family member personally in terms of some of the social things. But they always want to, paint with that broadest brush, and it's like, no. Consider some of these topics individually. Not all of them lend themselves to complete government abandonment. You need the federal government in there to make rules and regulations. Some of this other stuff, probably we can get the government out of there. But I will tell you, let's take drugs, for example. There are people that would argue today that the federal government still needs to be involved in criminally prosecuting people who substance abusers and substance dealers. And again, you can't have it both ways. You want limited government, but only in the things that are important to you, and the stuff that you think people should be punished for. You're all about government intervention. You're all about government overreach.
Yeah,
that's the most frustrating thing about talking to people, is that their concept of what should be and what should not be in terms of politics is so self-serving. It makes me not want to talk to these people.
Well, again, like to that same point, the reverse is true of the blue side. If you want the government to be in everything, as long as they're doing things you like, you want the government to be in everything.
Right. But these are the same people yelling defund the police who they keep conveniently forgetting is still the government.
Or things of that nature. Yeah, like there's several of those. So you want to put forth the socialist proposition. Yes, we need to, because the political system is corrupt and abusive. So you want more power for the abusive and corrupt system to dictate more things in your life. Like, well, no, but only the good ones. Like, okay, you don't see the problem here, do you? And yeah, it is. It's deeply frustrating.
Yeah.
Because
all right,
people consider those things very broadly.
All right. The polls have been closed in a couple of different states. So let's see where we are right now. Let's see here. Right now they're talking about Ohio. Doesn't look like they called anything just yet.
No, again, Ohio was leaning red in most of its stuff last I checked, but not by huge margins.
Yeah, not much movement on the House side either just yet.
I mean, you'd think that these giant government apparatuses would be in position to report appropriately when they should, but
looks like they called an election in Rhode Island for McKee. Okay, we have the South Carolina governorship that was run by McMaster with 48 in, but I imagine they called that a while ago.
There's a decent chance.
Thune won in South Dakota. All right, that's a new one.
Again, not terribly surprising.
Not at all. Like tennis. All right, Abbott won the governorship of Texas.
Once again, Beto O'Rourke is a giant loser.
Right now, Fox has 42-41 in the Senate, Democrats to Republicans.
Yeah, again, that's kind of about right. Again, we weren't. The House is where things were going to get interesting. The Senate was kind of going to be a holdover this time around more than anything. So again, we're still waiting on a few of those, but yeah, Abbott beating Beto O'Rourke, not terribly surprising. Again, Beto O'Rourke has never won anything in his life. I think he was a backup congressman before he tried to run for the Senate, if memory serves. Like all he does is lose elections. But I can't wait for Stacey Abrams to be defeated again, and then to have to listen to another 4 years of her going, "No, I'm really the governor." There was a time, Mark, when people that out of touch with reality faced consequences for being so out of touch with reality.
Okay, I'm on realclearpolitics.com right now, and we are looking at the House results. It's got it 80. Democrats have 80, Republicans 137. Democrats have lost 7 seats, Republicans have gained 7 seats.
That sounds about right. Yeah, man, there were a lot of door-to-door kind of campaigns that were having to go on here where some of these poor Democratic candidates were not funded properly, and we're trying to explain to people that, no, I'm really not attached to all the craziness. If you look at some of the issues and some of the exit polls that have this data, look at what's kind of been driving people. It's not what some of the Democrats were talking about. It's not fear for the future of the country. It's not fear over abortion laws. It's a lot of, I'm worried about whether or not I'm going to be able to feed myself.
So let's talk about
I'm worried about crime.
Let's talk about this Georgia race, this governor Georgia race, just real quick. Right now, according to Real Clear Politics, live result with 77% of the precincts reporting in. Brian Kemp has a lead of 53.6 to 45.7, with about 200,000-ish votes between them. I'm guessing they're saying that's still too soon, too close to call.
Well, and then there's already like lawsuits in place in Georgia because there's some dubious election stuff going on. And again, election law is its own subcategory of the legal system for a reason. Whether you think that's good or bad is up to you. But Georgia's had some weirdness around like how they choose to count things, so not terribly surprised. That'll probably hang in the balance for a little bit. I doubt we'll get anything definitive there tonight.
So one thing that came up in a bunch of conversations that I've been having between my father, the deputies, just random comings and goers, has been about the current inflation. Go ahead.
So all right. The Arizona governor race, again, very early now in terms of reporting, but that's leaning very heavily towards the Republican Kerry Lake. Yeah, DeSantis, they should just, I don't know what they should do with Charlie Crist other than like put him on a barge out to sea.
You're just talking about Arizona. There's about 30,000 votes between Hobbs and Lake.
Yeah, again, it's very early.
Yeah, there's less than 10% reporting in, so it's still way too soon to tell.
I bring that up because that kind of flashed across my thing recently. So,
okay. So this is an article here on Real Clear Politics I think is interesting. Mark Penn, Democrats became inflation deniers ahead of 2022 midterm election.
You are not wrong about that. Again, this goes out.
Inflation is the number one issue in the country, according to Mark Penn. And the fascinating thing to me is that the Democrats have said threat to democracy is really what they are running the campaign on, was what you were talking about before. I think the Biden administration did threat to democracy. They did student loans. They did marijuana pardons, millions of gallons of gas out of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. They did not confront these issues directly in a meaningful way. They became inflation deniers. And I think that was a really stupid strategy. And we will see whether or not I'm right. That does bring up an interesting point that I think communication is key with the American voters. If you are perceived as being honest and truthful, even if you're fucking up, people are like, this country is wildly forgiving. So, if you are
really is
charismatic, likable, and you're like, I'm sorry, I fucked up, people will forgive you. People will be like, okay, let's keep him in. He's at least talking to us like adults. So that is an interesting thing to say. Like when it's so obvious what's going on with inflation, to not just come out and say, we recognize this is a problem and here's what we're doing about it. People would have loved that.
Wouldn't it hurt? I mean, again, like that's the majority of what Republicans are running on at the moment is, yeah, we know this sucks. Here's our plan. We can probably just about call the New York governor race. We're at about 28% reporting in, but it's pretty heavily in favor of Kathy Hochul. And
well, Derpy, who normally hangs out with us on Tuesday nights, is here to watch our election coverage. We appreciate you, Derpy. And he says that Ryan lost Ohio. He also says, God, I hate November elections. Either what you choose, it's just dumb. Yes, well.
What was the old Simpsons meme when they did the Halloween episode about Bob Dole and Bill Clinton? Whichever way you vote, your planet is doomed.
Listen, you might think that these national elections are dumb. You might think representative democracy is sort of hopeless, but it's better than the alternative.
Again, like, I'm willing to accept it's dumb. I've not heard a better option.
All right,
that's my
Michael.
only thing there.
Yeah, Michael Bennett has won Colorado.
Not terribly surprising. Again, we have Greg Abbott. Again, at this point, kind of projected to beat Beto O'Rourke. We're up to around 60% reporting, and he's enough in the lead.
God, the Associated Press has Georgia in a freaking horse race, man.
They do, but they're also not going to admit if Herschel Walker wins.
Well, right here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, we'll be the first to call it when it happens. Actually, the Associated Press will be the first to call it, and we'll just parrot that.
Unless we get to a point with the Associated Press where we're like, you guys are idiots. Here's what's happening.
So that's the Senate right now.
Yeah, that one is close between Warnock and Walker. That's a tough one.
All right, in the House, the Associated Press is still gaining, still showing only a gain of 2 seats. Yeah.
So, yeah, again, there's a few of these that are not terribly surprising.
Mm-hmm. Ohio went blue in the last election, didn't it?
I don't know. I don't think so. I have to double check, but if you mean for Biden, I don't think they went for Biden. If you mean like the governorship or whatnot, I'm not sure.
Looking at Ohio now, in the governorship, yeah, it looks like Mike DeWine won the governorship in Ohio against Nan Wally. Yeah, Tim Ryan, it looks like he's going to lose his Senate seat to J.D. Vance.
Well, Ryan, hang on. Ryan's not running, I don't seem to recall.
It's in Ohio in the Senate, it's Tim Ryan versus J.D. Vance.
Well, I know Vance is the Republican there, if memory serves. And yeah, that was trending towards him.
That's got 67% reporting in, and J.D. Vance is ahead about 200,000 votes, give or take.
There's a decent enough chance that's kind of close enough to, I can make a reasonable prediction about Vance taking that over. So I believe that would be a pickup for the Republicans, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Ryan's the incumbent. So again, we're not unsurprising seeing, again, there's a lot of people who are very, very unhappy with what's going on at the moment. As far as the Arizona governor election, things swung a little bit more towards Katie Hobbs. Again, we're only at 7% reporting in, so take it for what it's worth. That one's going to be a bit back and forth. Again, Arizona, very swingy.
All right, I have up the viewer's guide, the races to watch on early on election night. This is from the Washington Post.
All right.
So what they're watching is the Georgia Senate race, which we've been keeping an eye on as well. And what we said about the Georgia Senate race was... Yeah.
Well, the Arizona Senate seat seems to be leaning Democrat at the moment towards Mark Kelly, 41% reporting in at the moment for Arizona in that particular race. So
Real Clear Politics has this thing dead even. Like
what, in Georgia?
Yeah, the Herschel Walker.
Yeah, that's going to be close, man.
Yeah, that is down to about 400 votes. Yikes.
Yeah, that's going to be real close.
That's not getting settled. That's not getting settled tonight.
No, not at all.
All right, next one.
And then there's gonna be a lawsuit. That's gonna be a whole thing.
Next one is the New Hampshire Senate race. So let's check in on that one.
All right.
Politics. New Hampshire Senate. Okay. That one's got Mackie Hassan with 41.9% reporting in, ahead by about 30,000 votes.
And given the size of New Hampshire,
yeah, I think that one they're going to call that one.
I imagine that's going to be called fairly soon.
Yeah, that would be my prediction. Next one, Michigan governor. Let's go back to Real Clear Politics,
which we have been kind of loosely tracking. Again, at the moment, that was leaning. What was it leaning last time I looked at it? I believe that was leaning Dem last time I checked, but that's fairly close.
What did I say, Michigan?
Michigan.
Michigan has Gretchen Whitmer with 52.1. She's ahead by about 50,000 with 21% reporting in.
There's a fairly long ways to go there in that one, but
I mean, if it continues to track the way it currently is, yeah, she's got that one handily.
Again, that's going to depend on like the next. We get another like 5 to 10% of the precincts reporting. If it keeps going that same trend, then yeah. So that would be my kind of prediction at the moment, given the way things are. But that one, again, that's been fairly close. And again, if you're getting the Michigan governorship to be that close, like there's a lot of people unhappy in Michigan.
Indiana and Kentucky feature some of the earliest poll closing times in the country, with much of those states closing by 6 p.m. Eastern. So Indiana's first district.
I believe that went red already. I think you mentioned that one went red.
I'm going to check for you. No. That one's still with 49%.
Okay, not called yet. Oh, it must have been another Indiana one you mentioned then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shit.
Fair enough.
In District 1, we got Frank Merkin Schmagegi. He's ahead by about 8,000 votes to Jennifer Ruth Green with 49.5% reporting in.
All right. So that one's still pretty tight.
Yeah. A lot of these ones that Washington Post said we should be watching, almost not a single one of them here. They're almost all nail biters. So I'm going to keep this up, and we'll keep checking back in as the night continues.
Yep, sounds good. So what are they doing over on Fox? If you got that up.
Yeah. They are currently at the Walker campaign. That's what they got up.
Okay, so that one's going to be real close.
All right, they've got Brady boxes up, and they're just looking at like campaign headquarters right now. So there's the Oz campaign headquarters. There's the Fetterman.
Both of those should be very, very sad assemblies of people in Pennsylvania. Did you watch did you see the debate between Oz and Fetterman?
No, what happened?
Oh, I mean, well, again, Fetterman had a stroke not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, no one cared that his campaign covered it up.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a little bit all over the place, which is not uncommon for people who are recovering from strokes. Like you lose word associations and whatnot and word finding. But he was all over the place, and Dr. Oz is a carny snake oil salesman.
Right.
Like I came away from that and like I saw a tweet like, well, after that debate, who do you think is qualified to run for the Senate in Pennsylvania? I actually put in like my 13-year-old beagle. I mean, I don't live in Pennsylvania, so my opinion doesn't matter whatsoever, and I tend to keep my mouth shut about other states' politics in that particular respect because I genuinely don't have the information. Pay attention, the majority of you celebrity jackasses out there. Can I just say, I could not believe the number of people who came out this last, couple of weeks and went, Georgia really needs Stacey Abrams. Like, you don't live in Georgia. You don't even have a house in Georgia. The hell are you talking about? You don't know what the state needs. You're reverting to tribalism rooting. Like,
all right,
you
so
don't know anything about this.
So another race to watch is the according to Politico.com, Virginia 2nd District, which I have up currently. And there's about a 20,000 vote difference between the Republican, Jen Kiggins, and the Democrat, Elaine Luria, with 88.8%. So I would imagine they're going to call that fairly soon.
Yeah, you get 88% reporting in. That's probably going to be called soon, like you mentioned. So
yeah.
Not terribly surprising to see that one. Again, while Virginia is a bit of a swing state, it's been leaning more red recently. So not terribly surprising to see that one. Let me have a quick look over here, see if I guess it looks like Mark is frozen. Yeah, there goes Mark for a second or two. So he'll be back momentarily. Yeah, he's loading in now. Come on, where are you, Marky? Mark's struggling a bit at the moment, it looks like, to try and load back in. So we'll keep you updated as far as that goes. Let me, in the interim, have a quick look for my other feed here. Again, looking at the Georgia Senate race, at the moment Walker is barely ahead. I think that swung just a little bit in his favor, but again, we're talking very, very, very narrow margins there.
Hey, I'm back.
There's Mark.
There I am. All right. So Fox has it 90 to 48 in the Senate, and right now it's 42 to 41 for the Democrats. 48 to 90 in the House for the Republicans, and then 42 to 41 for the Democrats in the Senate.
And again, there's a few of those races that are going to come in. I imagine, again, some of those I imagine are just going to kind of hold where they are. The Senate's still going to stay very close to 50-50 would be my hunch.
Mm-hmm. Hey, my dad said the same thing. He's like we're gonna hang. He's like the Democrats are gonna hang on to the Senate, but like for a very slim margin. It's probably not the worst thing, because I think when the Senate is close to evenly split, there's a lot of room for engagement and compromise.
You'd like to think that, wouldn't you?
I mean, it used to be, back in Reagan's time.
Look, I said I'm happy with the government doing very little. Like, I know what I think the government should do, and I'm happy when it does those things. And other than that, if it's gridlock, I don't care, because I'd rather a bunch of stuff, work more at the state level than be relying on the federal government, generally speaking.
Yeah, it looks like the Republicans have picked up 10 more seats, by the way.
So the Arizona governor race, things leaning more towards Katie Hobbs at the moment. We're up to 40% reporting. See, the Arizona Senate race, again, still leaning Democrat on Mark Kelly. Again, we're at 41%. That Senate race might be getting close enough. It might be getting, it's nearly wide enough to call in some respects, but the governorship is going to come down to the wire on that one, it looks like. I mean, again, not quite as close as Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock. That thing is going to come down to finding, like, we're going to get hanging chads in the discussion for this one, if I might make that old reference. That's how close that one's going to be. Again, yeah, Ron, we already know.
Fox has the hard-fought Nevada Senate race is too early to call.
Yeah, that one's going to be close. Like, again, Nevada's swinging a bit red this cycle, and it's That's going to be a tough one to watch because again, Nevada is one of those states that kind of vacillates. That's one that's flippable. The Oklahoma looks like it's going to stay red. We're up to 80% reporting in there, and I believe this is another Senate seat that would be retained. So again, a lot of maintenance of the status quo in the Senate. Michigan is not terribly surprising.
So it's weird. I have one of the things I have up, kind of keep track of things, is through
which
Google
cities
search.
Which cities are about to start burning.
Yeah. So I have like a Google page that's opened up with election results that's being fed from the Associated Press, but I'm not seeing a lot of movement here because if I go over to Politico.com has the House at 94-51, which is where Fox is.
Yeah. The AP, continuing to be the AP, I suppose. So yeah, again.
All right. So here's where we are right now, according to Politico.com. 18 out of 35 Senate seats have been called. 145 out of 435 in the House, million in 2020.
Well, yeah. Again, the House seems to be tilting pretty heavily towards the red side of the aisle. And again, if this means less Nancy Pelosi on my screen, we'll just call that a win.
All right. Races to watch. Let's go over, according to Politico.com. First one is the Pennsylvania race between the aforementioned Dr. Oz and Fetterman.
Yeah, again, what a sad train wreck that is. Dude, Fetterman released an ad, like a video on Twitter that was like aping the Mean Joe Green bit with the Coke.
Mm-hmm.
Where he's like slowly leaning against the wall, walking down. And where you going? I'm running for Senate. Doesn't look like you're running anywhere.
Yeah.
And here, take a Coke. Just sad.
All right. So, according to RealClearPolitics.com, with 55.7% reporting in, John Fetterman remains in the lead by about 120,000 votes.
He's probably going to win that.
Certainly looking that way.
And I imagine he will make a complete idiot out of himself for a couple of years before he's voted out. But I'm more surprised that the Republicans couldn't find someone better than Dr. Oz to run against him.
All right, we're down to. So we are going to go to just a little past 11 o'clock. That's when the next set of polls close. So we'll see where we are at 11, and then we'll do plugs and get out of here. So we've got about 30 more minutes left. Ish.
Oh, no. Yeah. So I suppose we should go to that next sketch of the Big Ear family. My obscure Simpsons reference of the evening.
I listened to you and Ben. Oh, hey, my friend's here. Hello.
Oh, you have friends.
I have friends. They came to check out our show.
Hello, friends of Mark.
So I was listening to you and Ben talk about the Treehouse of Horrors. It's rare where you get giddy. It was like me and Jesse talking about The Wire. It was just like, remember this? Yeah, remember this? Just laughing, and remember this and laughing, and remember this and laughing. It was nice to hear you happy.
Thank you, I suppose.
All right. As far as other races to watch, we've got the Senate race in Georgia.
That reminds me, Mark, speaking of races.
Yes, sir.
We know you're a fan. Sorry, I couldn't say it with a straight face. I had this. I promised one of my brothers I would make this joke with you, because we were discussing very briefly that Mark likes The Wire. Mark was raised in the hood. Mark's a fan of Black culture.
Somewhat, yes.
This came up because we were discussing how much Black Panther 2 is going to suck in a lot of respects. So
there's already talk of like Best Picture nomination for this thing.
Of course there was. Of course they're gonna try and do it. It's a crappy movie. I'm almost certain that movie's gonna suck.
Go on.
Your 3-hour runtime. But
Yeah.
I kind of mentioned that, and I know Mark likes this other group of people. And I kind of pause for a minute and go, I don't know which ethnic group Mark dislikes. So I'm gonna, here in front of God and everyone watching, let me get you in trouble.
I have no prejudices. Actually, my wife said something funny to me. Like I was talking to her about, my need for engagement, for matching energy. I said what I love about doing podcasts with you, I named you specifically, is whether we agree or disagree, you are always right there to bat the ball back at me. I am never not heard by you. There is always equal or greater engagement when you and I are doing this. And I named a few others, and I said I struggle with some other people. And my wife just kind of takes a beat and she looks at me, she's like, "Why do you hate women?" So there's your answer.
So that's it. Okay. Bit of a broader net that if I were gonna hazard a guess, it would have been Southeast Asia of some variety. I don't know if that would be like
I don't like them Vietnamese, you know what I mean?
I don't know if it was
angry about the war.
I didn't know if it was going to be Vietnam or the Philippines or Laos or Myanmar, but that would have been my guess.
Races to watch, according to Fox News. We've got the Arizona Senate race.
Now that I've offended everyone.
Just moving past it. We have Kelly up 56-41. Fetterman in Pennsylvania up 50-46. Beasley up 46. Bud up 51-46. And then, all right. So moving on. Hey, if you're hanging out in the chat, as I said, I just acknowledged some of our friends there. If you've got questions, if you got
questions or comments
besides hello, we're happy to put them on screen for you. If you got, if you just want to, make a statement about the election, about, who you think might take the Senate, who you think might take the House. If you're one of my friends and you're here in Florida and you've got some hard feelings, the fact that we went way red, this time
very
out,
red,
so red, like a horror movie.
Dude,
feel free to put your comments
for the record, so you
there.
all know, like DeSantis won Miami-Dade County, like outright.
Yeah. There's not a lot of there's not a lot of room for discussion right now about any kind of like Democratic representation here in. Sorry, my friend just wrote in. I'm not going to put it on screen, but she's like, honestly, I've been ignoring it.
The ostrich approach, not the worst.
It's politics. It's bad for your mental health. You know what?
It really is.
No disagreement.
People who live in that space, man, you're deranged.
Okay,
you are, so and I applaud you for it.
Just to kill time. So the very first time I put my dad on TikTok, I got like super subscribers. Like my subscriber count shot up after that. And because I'm into supporting my local content, my fellow content creators, everybody that liked and subscribed to me, I liked and subscribed back. So then now the way TikTok operates is you can look at your friends, or you can just look at like for you, and that's based on what the algorithm, the stuff that you like in the algorithm. Can I tell you, because I was just liking people and subscribing just to be reciprocal and not really looking at what I was looking at.
You should.
My entire feed was like fuck Trump, Black Lives Matter. It was like every Democrat on TikTok I became friends with, and that is all they talked about. Not a single one wanted to talk about Dr. Strange. They all were talking politics. And I have now gone through it looks like they just called the Pennsylvania governor's race for Shapiro, the Democrat.
Not surprising. Again, that's not surprising. He was widely projected to win that.
Yeah. But yeah, so I've had to go back now and start unfriending people because I'm like, I don't want all of this. I really don't.
I don't need this. I don't need this on my feed, man. Look.
I really don't. I don't need middle-aged white people angrily yelling into their phones about whatever is bothering them in that particular moment. It's funny when it's my dad, by the way. I don't need it from anyone else.
Look, you tolerate it from your family members because they're your family members, right?
And because it gets me views.
Sure, but like there's people I know, people I like, who I do not follow on Twitter, and I am not friends with on Facebook because I know what their feed looks like, and I don't need that. And I make it a point to have friends on both sides of the theoretical aisle. I do that for a very specific reason, actually. Because this is a weird thing about human biochemistry and how the psychology of the human brain has evolved. But do you know what happens when you the human brain is good at sorting things, and it's really good about this one particular distinction. It's good about sorting out us from them.
Mm-hmm.
And to any potential racists out there, you're idiots, first of all. But second of all, there is no racial component to the us or them thing that our brain does. Absolutely none. It is learned behavior. It is 100% learned behavior.
All right. So in South Carolina, Scott won the Senate seat.
Again, not terribly surprising, and a lot of parity still kind of being maintained.
Looking at the AP again in the Senate, it's still 40 to. Hang on, let me double check that.
Yeah, man, that Georgia Senate, we're at 81% reporting again. Dead freaking heat, man. That's a nail biter. That's coming down to the wire. But well, you look that up. The point I was making is one of the things that happens when your brain sorts us versus them, and again, us can be anyone, them can be anyone. You stop seeing people's faces, which is a weird thing, but it's true. You stop perceiving faces, you stop perceiving them as human. And I am terrified about what would happen to me if I start falling into this. And given the ungodly tribalistic nature of American politics and the way we think about each other, I make it a point to have friends who disagree with me. They're not my friends because they disagree with me about things. I would be their friend regardless. But I make it a point to be sure that this is someone who I understand is different than me in a lot of respects, but I still recognize as human. You can still see their faces.
My friend weighing in here, I'm generally more left-leaning, but I hate hearing people scream about their opinions on both sides, even more so on left because it's just screeching. That's it. That's
you are not
generally
wrong.
Been my problem. So I talked about this on the Metal Hammer of Doom. But we were talking about the Beastie Boys, and I said,
I don't know why a one-hit wonder gets that much.
Oh my God, they're not a one-hit wonder, you lunatic. But
of course they are.
I mentioned
they have one song.
Shut up. I have mentioned
it's
on
Sabotage. That's the only Beastie Boys song.
Despite I've never your lunacy with regarding the Beastie Boys, I know you're just yanking on my chain here, but I'm just gonna ignore you. But I said, you and I have had some fairly vocal disagreements. And I said the thing that I've always liked about talking, doing podcasts with you in particular, was that we could just disagree. You saw things. Most of Damn You Hollywood over the years, whether we called it that or not, was you and I disagreeing. But we could. But it was but why are you saying that? And we would just kind of go back and forth. I've come to realize that our relationship and our ability to have discourse, not that kind of discourse, you sexy fiends, normal talking discourse, is that we can have a civil disagreement, and we don't, and only when one of us is in pain and yelling at the other does it ever boil down to wanting to punch each other.
Yeah.
But I have found that a lot of people if they're not getting agreement as part of their engagement, they can't keep it together, and the conversation doesn't last very long, or the conversation degenerates into just screaming at one another.
A lot. That happens a lot. You and I are you and I, not just our relationship with each other, but our ability to do that with other people is fairly atypical.
Yeah, I've learned that over the years. I get asked a lot of times why I do podcasts. Because podcasting is about the only venue where I can actually have a civil conversation with people these days.
It's true. Yeah, there's a lot of, this is true of people who consume opinion media, and to be abundantly clear, I've been guilty of this, and in certain respects, I still am. People aren't interested in your opinion. They're interested in hearing their opinion come out of your mouth.
Yeah.
And that's very prevalent. And again, I try very, very hard to avoid that as a general rule.
That came up about the drinker recently, where I think some of the stuff he's putting out is clearly to chum the waters of his followers, and not really not really the kind of intellectual discourse I've come to appreciate from the drinker when he's doing true film analysis. But that's also a conversation for a different day.
Hey, the YouTube algorithm must be fed. If that is a big part of your profession and your income, you do what you got to do. And
No,
again,
and I said that. I was like, I get it. I don't like when people are disingenuous, and that's what it comes across as. But I also understand the need to pay bills.
Well, again, as far as Drinker, since you brought him up, like there's some of his stuff that he's done recently that I haven't agreed with. There's some that I have. His spiel about why modern movies suck, I actually find very interesting.
Yeah,
because he's touched on like 5 different things that, if you look at the system of movie making and whatnot, like here's the problems, and here's the evidence to support my claims about them being problems. And I kind of wind up going, you know what? You're more right than you are wrong about most of these.
Speaking of right and wrong, the 2022 Georgia Senate election, this thing, man, this is the race right here.
That really is, man. That's the one everybody's got. That if you're gonna storm a ballot center, you got to do one of the ones in Georgia.
There's gonna be so many lawsuits in this election.
Again, which is not terribly surprising. Georgia and Arizona have
this thing is down to a little less than 40,000. Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? It is 49.6 to 48.5 with 82% reporting. That's crazy, man. Like
that one's gonna be real tight.
There's a bus right now collecting homeless people to try to get more voters.
You are not wrong. You're not wrong for the Senate. Meanwhile, for the governorship of Georgia, that's becoming wider in favor of Kemp.
Yeah, Kemp's starting to run away with it now with 82. They need to call that. This is some bullshit. It's 54% to 45.3 with 300,000 between them. Just call it for Brian Kemp, you cowards.
And we're 80% reporting in, something like that.
82.4, motherfucker. Come on now.
Again, look, no media institution is going to call that because they don't want to say that Stacey Abrams lost again, even though she is just a political loser.
All right, so I think the other one was Georgia District 2. Was that one of the ones we were watching?
That or was Indiana 1?
Yeah, something like I know that one too, but I'm just kind of keeping in Georgia right now. Georgia District 2 is got a difference of 20,000 votes for the Democrat, Sanford Bishop. Again, they got to start calling some of these. Like, Jesus Christ, the margin. Okay, they did call that one for District 3. I was like, come on, man, 85%, 69 to 30.
Some of those, I guarantee, like some of those have been called, but some of them are going to be real close.
I didn't notice the check mark at first.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Most of Georgia has been called at this point.
A lot of it. Yeah.
The only one that's the holdout is District 2. It looks like, which is kind of a nail biter. Let's check in on Pennsylvania.
Oh, that poor state.
Hope folks are enjoying our. Okay, so we actually have a question here from my friend. I'll put it on screen for her. Is this the election for the abortion thing? We talked about that earlier. Well, I'm finding info on Pennsylvania. Let's talk about some of these ballot initiatives concerning abortion. We covered this about an hour ago, where the media interpretation was that abortion and the need to want to keep abortion legal was going to drive people to the polls. That has not been the case.
Not at all been the case. Yeah. Again, this is in individual states. It might, because this is going to wind up being a state thing. And again, my opinion is that it should be. If you want to look at how I think the government should be dealing with this, I think that should be a state by state choice thing. But that's just me. States where it's been an issue that have put initiatives forth and whatnot might be getting slightly higher turnout, but the notion that this is across the board going to drive turnout, it turns out to be very, very false. Like I said, most people don't care. Most people are much more concerned about much more immediate things.
Yeah, they are. It's in the inflation that's driving people to the polls, as it is almost in every election. Like, that's not news. That is my brilliant fucking analysis. Every year,
for some reason, everyone forgets every 2 years that it's the economy. Stupid
collective amnesia for the last 30 years of elections.
We have these social issues that we think are going to be the big driver, and you talk to people, and it's like, well, I'm worried about my safety. I'm worried about how much gas costs, and I'm worried about my taxes.
Only other time people came to the polls in large numbers for anything that didn't have the economy attached to it was when was during the Bush years, and it was because of the Gulf War.
Yep.
The Iraq War. That was a hot button issue, and there were people actively like, yeah, I don't, wallet schmallet, I don't want to be there, or wallet schmallet, kill more Arabs. Like that was a big dividing line. But other than that, like the only thing that really historically, if you look at the data, and I want to be clear about this, historically, if you look at the data, the thing that drives people to the polls is things related to the economy, inflation, jobs.
The problem is we don't teach those. Like if you look at what we teach people about election cycles and whatnot, what were great moments in American history when things were voted upon? They talk about big social issues. They talk about stuff like that rather than, which is, I'm not saying they should be ignored, but that's somewhat atypical and should not be considered the norm. If you think that's the norm, you come away with this notion that, well, if I put forth everything to be about a social issue, then I'll drive turnout, and that's really not the case. I guarantee you people are much more concerned about the crime rates within their locales than they are about abortion.
There was a false assumption about the Trump election that what drove that was to a large degree, larger than in actuality, racism, the border, illegal immigration, that sort of thing. In reality, a lot of people voted for Trump because he thought that there would be large job creation under him. We have dealt with this time and time again. I have been writing about it when I was doing the 411 politics page.
Boy, remember that politics section? What a dumpster fire.
I was a part of that dumpster fire, if you'll recall.
I know. And look, that's not just the quality of writing being produced. That's like the comment section and everything that goes into that.
It was dude, I wrote an article. This is what I'm getting to. Like my dad and I did a highly detailed, highly researched article about how job loss in this country has been due to technology, not necessarily because of NAFTA or GATT, and not necessarily because of illegal immigration. It was because of technology. You need less people to make widgets than you used to because you have machines to do it now. Yep. Did a whole thing about this. The comments I got were about like 2 girls, 1 cup, or like 2 guys, 1 hammer. Like, why? 411, everybody. That's why I don't write there anymore.
Yeah, that's
anyway,
why.
One of the reasons. But yeah, what drove a lot of the Trump election was the belief, religious or otherwise, that with Trump, jobs would come back. Jobs for specific kinds of jobs, the kind of job you can do with no education that you can buy a house with. So that's never going to happen. Those days are gone. Those days are like 50 years gone. We live in a completely different world now.
At this point, yeah.
But people believed that was a possibility, and that was certainly what he was promising. So they voted for him.
And I mean, we've mentioned this before as well. Like, if there's not a pandemic in 2022, Trump wins re-election.
Yeah, I was convinced of that, and I was convinced of that until COVID, and that pretty much changed everything.
Yeah, again, his handling of the pandemic and kind of what came out of that is what changed that. And if you look at how narrowly that election was won, and if you just look at the like, oh yay, here, if you just look at the electoral returns, like, oh no, Biden won pretty comfortably. Look at the individual states. That was not a comfortable win at all.
Our friend weighing in here. That's why I liked Yang in 2020. He's the only person I've heard running for office talking about automation and actually had a plan for it. Yeah, he was talking about basic income guarantees. When I was in grad school, so many years ago, in 2001 through 2004.
So I'm, for the record, my high school years, Mark's in grad school.
Yeah, I'm in grad school, working in Brooklyn in foster care. Yeah, the basic income guarantee was a hot button topic that was bandied around us social work intellectuals.
For some reason it still is 20 some odd years later, and no one's learned.
Well, I was going to say, and it took 20 years for somebody to run it as a major as part of his like primary platform. I mean, granted, Andrew Yang wasn't going to win an election or anything. I don't think he even made it through the primaries.
He did not.
It took that long for what was largely considered to be a communist idea to make it to even close to mainstream political discourse. And to this day, there's no serious conversations about a basic income guarantee because there's a lot of zealous belief in the pull yourself up by your own bootstraps mentality. That's a little divorced from economic reality.
As an economic realist, my issue with the universal basic income is as follows. Everyone who likes to point to places where it works does not like to point out the substantial differences between there and here.
Like population size.
For starters, like if you have a population, I mean, like, people bring up, like, Norway or Sweden or Denmark, none of which have, like,
Denmark is what I was thinking of.
All of which, like, collectively have the population of Southern California. Yeah, with a culturally homogenous people, and geographic low numbers and geographic consistency, you can make it work. I don't know that it works for 300 million plus Americans, given our current setup. Like, all you'll wind up doing with that is driving more inflation because you're just putting more money out there for people to spend.
I think there's a conversation to be had about elements of I remember in grad school, there were people who were not comfortable with an income guarantee, but what about a jobs guarantee? What about, government programs that create easy to employ menial labor jobs, things like that. But then we're back to the.
I mean, look, those exist because nobody wants them.
Well, there's a conversation to be had there, is my point.
Okay, again, that's a very broad point that I just made, but if you're worried about work, I guarantee you some local construction company can use you.
We can debate the merits of a basic income guarantee on a different podcast. I have some stats in front of me, but I want to talk about the Pennsylvania Senate election. John Fetterman.
They're probably about to call. I imagine they're about to call that one.
It's only 65 reporting in. It is a slow count there in Pennsylvania. There's an old lady with glasses.
There's
down
a lot.
Here.
There's like a lot of slow things. A lot of slow things in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Not the least of which are the two people running for Senate.
They got the fucking Amish counting ballots in Pennsylvania, man. This did not take that long. Anyway, so John Fetterman is up less than 100,000, and it's looking like, about 40,000 votes. For governor,
they called the Pennsylvania governor race for Shapiro, I believe.
Shapiro, yes, yep. It's called for Shapiro. That's done already.
Again, not surprising. He was widely projected to win that.
All right, so Pennsylvania District 1 with 34.9, only 34.9%. Why? What? Stop getting the Amish to count your votes.
No. Get the Amish to count your votes. They're efficient. The Amish are an efficient people, Mark.
They're slow as shit is what they are. And that's
it's always the newfangled ballot boxes that you have problems with. You notice that, like, the old ones, like in the backwoods of Oklahoma or something, that have been there since the time of FDR, and you punch the ballot, like, you don't have a problem with those.
So it's so funny. I voted today at my local polling place. It's the Bay Area Life Church here in Valrico, and they hand me my ballot and everything. And I'm thinking, and I see the boxes, like the voting boxes, or whatever. I'm like, okay, they've got to have electronic booths, right? Like, nope, And then I go to I think there's going to be something in there. Like, I thought they just handed me like a guide or something. I didn't realize it was my actual ballot.
No, they hand you the ballot, and then there's like a podium in there, or a lectern where you have to put the thing on so you can mark down.
Right. Yeah, I didn't have a pen, and I needed one because that's the kind of ballots we had. No, I had to run and go get a pen. And they're like, you can keep it, and I'm like, no, it's all right. You can have your stupid pen back. But I was very disappointed. Like, why don't we have electronic voting machines in Florida, especially with our record in voting?
Well, to be fair, like, you guys haven't had a bad record in voting since 2000. Like, something you kind of got your act together.
All right, so there's a bunch of races that were already called in Pennsylvania, but District 1 is still open with 34.9% reporting in for Ashley Has. That's how you pronounce your name. District 5, only 19% reporting in, and that's for the District 6.
Well, Mark seems to be frozen again. Right, might be catching up.
There we go.
There we go. Yay.
Yay. Stupid laggy internet. All right. District 5 is still open. District 6, District 7, District 8, almost all for the Democrats. District 9 was already called for Daniel Moiser of the Republican Party. 10 and 11 are still open. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, all called. And then finally 17 still open with 85.9% reporting in. We have Chris DeLuzio winning by about 30,000 votes. That one, they got to call that one soon, I would imagine.
Yeah, one would assume.
All right. We have 5 minutes till the polls close again. So we'll stay with you through the next series of poll closing, see if anything...
We'll probably be here for another 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, and then we're going to call it for the evening. I got to go to work tomorrow. I work, Robert Winfree. I'm a working man.
I imagine you will be dealing with a lot of people who are upset and who went out tonight and committed crimes, and you will be screening and processing a lot of them.
Florida is not the blue state I wanted it to be, so I robbed a Radio Shack.
Radio Shack's not a thing anymore, Mark.
It might be in some parts of Florida.
Okay, fair enough, but you know that does bear some examination briefly. Like, what do people even loot anymore?
Whatever's in the storefront.
I know that, but like, with the death of so much retail,
I mean, there's still stuff that exists.
I know it exists. Like, there's physical buildings that they break into.
All that's left is restaurant. People are like looting falafel and shit.
Wouldn't surprise me. Or if you live in Seattle, when that's just all it is every day. The homeless just kind of walk past you as you're in line at Starbucks and just take crap off take stuff and then walk out.
All right. What other states do you want to look at real quick? You want to check in on? Arkansas, or rather Arizona.
Let's check Arizona, and then if I could, for my own personal amusement, if you said Utah had closer, we might be getting some reporting from that. So let's check Arizona first. Again, Arizona's probably about to the point where it's going to look to be called.
All right. Right now, it looks like Mark Kelly with 50% of the votes in. Final results. Mark Kelly won the Arizona Senate seat, it looks like, I think. Go back. No, there's Real Clear Politics has that still going.
Okay.
Arizona governor with 50% of the votes, with 50% reporting in. Katie Hobbs is currently in the lead. She's the Democrat versus Carrie Lake. And in the House, whose house? Ron's house. Almost every single one of these, it's either close or it's the Democrat. Except for Arizona District 8 and 9, where it was a Republican and a write-in. Okay, guess who won?
I could guess, but I don't know that you want me to. Yeah. Okay. So North Carolina is leaning red, and I believe that's the Senate race. That's 89% reporting in. It is favoring Ted Budd at the moment over Sherry Beasley. Again, that's they're going to be close to calling that one again when you get to around 90% reporting.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania has tightened up.
Hang on.
You mentioned that a little bit ago.
Since you brought up North Carolina, let me look at the House here. North Carolina District 1 look like it's going to go to the Democrat. District 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, almost every other district except for 13 looks like it was called already. And District 13 looks like it's going to Wiley Nickel with 80% of the
minor update from Georgia. Herschel Walker with 83% reporting in is now slightly ahead of Warnock. Slightly. That one, man. Again, that's coming. That's going to come down to the freaking wire, as we mentioned before. But Walker seems to be in the lead at the moment, for whatever that's worth.
All right. Well, Utah isn't going to close for another minute or so.
Oh, okay. I thought you mentioned. I thought they'd already closed. So if not, then no worries.
Wisconsin. In the Wisconsin Senate, it is a dead heat. Literally, it's like a difference of almost 3,000, maybe like even less than that, like 2,000 votes between Mandela Barnes and Ron Johnson with 59.9% reporting. For the governorship, it's another tight one with about give or take 50,000 between Tony Evers and Tim Michaels. Yeah, that's what she said. I don't know.
That would be that's what he said.
It's funny when you say that's what she said.
I know, but it's inaccurate in this case.
In Wisconsin, it looks like the Republican is ahead with 67.4 reporting in by about 20-ish.
It's still pretty close.
We have a dead heat with 46.9 reporting in at District 3. And District 7 has Tom Tiffany in a rather large, like almost 50,000 ahead. So that's that.
Yeah, Wisconsin seemed like it was going to have some pretty big turnout. Again, I think this year you're going to see one of the big things that's going to be analyzed after the fact is the variance in turnout from state to state, because again, Nevada, the youth did not show up. Like no one under 35 pretty much showed up to vote in Nevada.
Right. Fox is calling the race for Murray, I think it is. They said in the Senate, Washington Senate. See, I have the closed caption on, so it's like covering half the graphics. God damn it. Yeah, they're calling a bunch of Senate seats.
Well, again, we anticipated a lot of those kind of just remaining static, so not too surprising. Actually, again, like,
so the balance of power in the Senate, we're at Democrats 45. We're at Democrats 45 and Republicans 44.
That'll probably go back up to 45 again with a couple of these other races that are about to be reported on. So, not a lot of movement would be my guess.
Real Clear Politics has it 44 to 45. In the Senate, in the House, it's 101 to 158. And then the governors, it's 13 to 22 in favor of the Republicans, but the Democrats picked up 2 seats and the Republicans lost 2.
Yeah, again, like the House is where a lot of things are flipping around this particular election cycle. It looks like, again, the Republicans picked up a lot of House seats, which is, again, this was largely predicted.
All right, our friend here, is there a reason the wording on the ballot is so confusing? I saw a sample of it and had to reread it like 3 times to understand what it was saying. And she unfortunately couldn't vote because she had just moved. But I think it's a good question if you want to tackle that real quick while I gather some data about why wording on the ballots might be difficult for people.
Because people aren't used to processing language that is the language of the law. Is kind of the short answer to that. Law is written in a very kind of specific rhythm with a very specific syntax. There's a reason it's called legalese. Like that joke about the language there exists for a reason. And for certain things when you're voting on, especially again constitutional amendments, ballot initiatives, etc., they tend to be worded in rough approximation of the language that will be used in the final in kind of the final iteration. And that's just not a way most people are used to thinking about. They're not used to reading. It's just experience and exposure to a type of language. Kind of the same reason people struggle with Shakespeare in some respects. If you just read it, like you're not used to some of the language usage. You're not used to some of the rhythm and so mostly it's that.
All right, let's quick go through the races to watch, and then I think we're going to call it for the evening. Governor races too close to call: New York, Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, and New Mexico.
New York, again, New York's probably going to wind up going to Kathy Hochul. I would be a little bit, again, that's going to be closer than you'd think it would for New York, the state being what it is, but
yeah,
especially with, how crime has just kind of skyrocketed in New York City.
Okay. So whipping through the states that we're currently watching, Georgia, the Senate, Warnock versus Walker, Andre versus Hogan, with 80.
At the moment, leans ever so slightly towards Herschel Walker.
We are talking like less than about 30,000 votes. It's like a drop in the bucket.
Wow, that's actually wider than it was the last time I looked at that. It was a lot closer. I mean, that's still ridiculously close, just to be abundantly clear.
Yeah, it's at 86.1 with 86.1 reporting in. Herschel Walker has the slightest, like we are talking a 1% lead over Warnock.
That's all you need at the end of the day, but boy, that's close.
Well, I think when it's that close, it generates a recount, so we probably won't get an answer to that one until
unless somebody decides to concede, and neither of them will.
Not who concedes when it's that close, though.
Al Gore.
All right.
Tell me I'm wrong.
With 86% reporting in, Brian Kemp has a substantial lead over Stacey Abrams.
Again, look, Stacey Abrams is once again going to declare herself governor by personal fiat, and then a giant chunk of the media apparatus will pretend that she's the governor of Georgia. That's what she did 4 years ago, if you'll recall.
All right. Well, there's a difference of about 300-ish, plus or minus, votes between Brian Kemp and Stacey Abrams, with 86% pointing.
They said about 300,000, give or take.
I'm curious. Normally, when it's that high, they'll start calling it, especially with that many votes in between.
Well,
but when they don't, it's because they're waiting for an outlier district to report in that hasn't yet. Things like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
One of the things I used to like about watching election coverage was the minutia of vote counting and districting. And they were like, well, you can't call it because this district tends to vote one way and they are not in yet. And if they vote the way we think they're going to, it's going to flip the script a bit. Most of the House races have been called. So
again, most of these are going red.
Yep. District 1, red. District 2, blue. District 3,
ride
the
red wave, baby.
5 blue, 6 red, 7 blue, 8 red, 9 red, 10 red, 11 red, 12 red, 13 blue, and 14 red. So, so it was more red than blue, it looked like. I think.
And again, when we look nationally at the House and what's happened at the moment, the Republicans have picked up a giant chunk of seats.
Yeah, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blue districts. The rest is deep red. Deep red. So that's Georgia. Let's go over to on. Yeah.
Okay, here's the last thing I'm going to say on. While you bring that up, just because we started this thing with Florida. It's kind of assumed at this point that Trump's going to try and run for president again in 2024.
God, I hope not.
I think if he were smart, he would not run, but he would kind of support DeSantis.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if DeSantis runs in 2024, I think he wins.
Yeah, most assuredly. He's kind of like the new Rudy Giuliani in that, he's America's president. You know what I mean? Like that kind of
the number of people who.
But again, it's because of what happened here in Florida.
Yeah.
People looked at Florida and were like, I wish he was our governor. Right or wrong, stupid or not stupid. That was the sort of anecdotal take.
It's so much of, boy, DeSantis really knew what he was doing, really handled that well. In the same vein, you guys just had a hurricane, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
please don't remind me. I lost so much that week.
Okay.
Concerts I didn't get to go to. Dates I didn't get to go on.
Okay, things that don't really matter. I had to pause.
Matter to me.
Mark. Don't actually matter. Any and all of those can be refunded or rescheduled.
I had to live in the jail for a week. It sucked.
Okay, that sucks, and you have my eternal sympathy for spending a week at your job. That is I don't wish that on too many people.
Thank you.
Like that you have my sympathy for. I had to reschedule my concert. No, I don't care. But point is, you had a pretty serious hurricane come through.
Yeah, like fucking leveled Fort Myers. It looked like Baghdad.
And the entire Democratic apparatus could not find bad things to say about Ron DeSantis, how he handled a big natural disaster either.
All right. Just so we can close up for the evening. Looking at, let's gonna look at Pennsylvania real quick because I think that's the other big state. Yeah, this one. All right, now Fetterman slightly in the lead here.
Yeah, again, that closed up a bit, but it does still favor him
by about 40-ish thousand votes, with 72.7 reporting in.
Too close to call. Yeah. That again, looking at what districts have reported, that is still a bit too close to call. But
yeah,
my hunch would be Fetterman.
We've said before they've already called the governor for Josh Shapiro.
Yeah.
By a fairly large margin.
Yeah, again, that one wasn't that much as I have issues with Shapiro. Again, to the extent that I'm aware of issues with him. I don't think that was terribly surprising. Like, he's not one of those wildly controversial figures.
District 1 still out, with about 5,000 votes between the two candidates. District 6, about 20,000 between the Democrat and the Republican. About 10. About 14,000 for District 7 between the Republican and the Democrat. About 15 in District 8. 2,000 in District 10 with 75.8 reporting, and that's another fucking horse race. Yeah,
that's close.
All right. Anything else before we start to wrap up?
No, I think that's kind of what we're going to wind up with here. Again, my predictions as far as that goes, I think the Senate's going to remain pretty much where it was, which is about 50-50. There's maybe one seat that might still flip. So that kind of remains to be seen. But, well, I mean, again, the Georgia seat might flip. We have no idea what's going on with that sucker. They might wind up doing is pulling a King Solomon with that. And okay, there's a 6-year tenure for this chair. 3 years will be Warnock. 3 years will be Walker. You guys can go back. You can go back and forth each year. That'll be fun. So, but the House is going red pretty demonstrably, which is not surprising. So,
according to Real Clear Politics, just a final tally before we. Ouch.
Well, Mark, we need to celebrate that. We need to acknowledge that this election. Do we know what this election is, Mark?
What is this election?
Well, with the Republicans winning so much, this is the last election that will ever be held in America. Our democracy, Mark. Our democracy. Yeah. We won't be here in 2 years for a presidential election.
The Senate currently stands at 44-45 in favor of the Republicans. The House has it 104-166, with 9 seats gained by the Republicans and 9 seats lost by the Democrats.
Yeah, and for the record, I think that statistic is going to get worse for the Democrats before the night's over.
And then finally, the governors, Democrats 14 with +2 seats, Republicans 23, even though they lost 2 seats. So that is where we stand.
Yeah.
Let me say this final thing to people who might be listening to this in the next day or so, and and they're Democrats, and they're like, why didn't we do better? Here's the thing. You win some, you win some, you lose some. 2,
do you want me to tell you why you didn't do well?
2, hang on. The pattern is always like,
this is the pattern.
The pattern is about every 2 years it switches, unless there's like a major catastrophe, a war or a plague. For the most part, people have enough patience. People have the patience every 2 years, and then they want to switch. Something changes. It's very rare that the party in control maintains control for the entire 4-year span of a president.
You almost never see a president have one party control the House and the White House and both houses of Congress for a full 4 years. Like that, right? Almost never happens.
So I mean, why did you lose? Other than some of the more picayune reasons, you lost because it was your turn. Like,
look, it was your turn to lose. You hitched your horse to the wrong issues to try and run,
mhm.
and nobody likes Biden.
So,
I mean, look, this is one of those things that gets discussed. If the top of your party, if the top of your ticket is unpopular, that hurts everyone further down. It rolls downhill.
think of it this way,
I
though.
don't.
So the Republicans won most of their elections this term. In 2 years, it'll be your turn again, and your guy will stay president. There you go.
Well, two things about that. One, Biden's not running again.
You don't think so?
Dude, he's barely sapient right now. Have you not
Let me ask
seen...
you a question about that. Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think
Right.
Kamala Harris steps in and runs as president? Because I'll tell you, on the one hand, kind of unless there's a plague, an active plague, it's hard to unseat a sitting president. However, it's not the actual sitting president. It might be a lot easier.
It would not be hard to beat Kamala Harris. She is a terrible politician.
I don't doubt that. But
look, hang on. Do you want to know how bad she is at this? I absolutely mean this. Do you want to know how bad she is at this? She had to withdraw from the Democratic presidential primary procedure before the first primary.
Because
she sucked.
Okay.
Like that. No. I mean it. That's how bad she was. She couldn't actually get elected. She could not win a single primary. She could not win anything. She had to withdraw before like the first or second primary was even completed. That's how little
Fox
traction she had.
JD Vance wins the Ohio Senate race, so we actually have like a good race to call before we get out of here.
Go. Again, Kamala Harris makes Hillary Clinton look like a warm and welcoming human being.
All right, folks. That is our.
Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. That's all.
That is our midterm election night 2022 alternative commentary for this year. Hey, neither one of our jaws hurt. Everything more or less worked, minus some laggy internet at times. This was fun. It's been, like I said, it's been a long time since I've been able to do this. It was fun to just kind of get all nerdy with our political coverage. So I enjoyed our conversation. I hope you all did too. This is, I think, it for me for this week.
While you look up the schedule, let me sign this off the way I usually sign these things off. People out there, I know you're worried. I know you have reason to be worried. Oh, for the love of. Fair enough. Look, I said this when Trump won. I said this when Trump lost. It's going to be okay. This is not the end of the world. Like, the end of the world might be coming, and it might, relatively speaking, be imminent, depending on what you believe. This is not the end of the world. This is not the most important election of your lifetime. This is not trying to vote in or out a party of genocide or anything ludicrous like that. This is business as usual. Stay informed about your local issues. Stay involved if you choose to be involved. That's all fine and dandy. It's okay. The people around you in your immediate vicinity matter so much more than the vast majority of stuff the politicians talk about. So much more. The majority of this does not matter, and it will not affect you in any kind of meaningful way. You're going to be all right. People around you who care about you will still care about you. People around you who don't like you will still not like you, and screw them anyway. And Mark and I will be back here in 2 years to talk about the actual end of the world. Because next year, Mark, 2 years from now, the last election in the history of America will take place. God. I'm sure of it. I am going to use that, by the way.
Sunday night was our first ever Metal Hammer of Doom jukebox. Other than learning that I cannot live stream music videos without tripping up YouTube and making it think I'm spamming or committing a community violation of some kind. It was a good show. We had a good, we reviewed the new Slipknot. I talked the fall concerts that I went to, and then Jesse took us back to 1992, the most influential metal albums of that year. So we had a great conversation. We watched some fun videos. All in all, very successful show, I thought. Check it out in the archives. I've listened to it a bunch of times. Speaking of successful shows, Alexis Hana led a panel of David Wright and co, two other members, Andrew Rose co, and David Lozano. She talked House of the Dragon. Did a great job with that. Tomorrow, there's no show, as near as I can tell. Thursday, we're going to be airing the Everyone Loves a Bad Guy, the MCU Part 2. That was Robert Winfree and Benjamin J. Cologne. And then the evening, Alexis Hana will be reviewing Cabinet of Curiosity. And
I will be on that.
This weekend, we're re-airing our Damn You Hollywood for Jason Bourne, and then the Long Road to Ruin for the Jason Bourne trilogy with Matt Damon. He's in the movie.
Matt Damon, he's in the movie. He does the thing.
Next week, I will be doing a review with Ronnie Adams and David Wright for the Lord of the Rings Rings of Power show on Amazon Prime.
I'm so sorry.
And we are back here. Same bat time, same bat channel for Wakanda Forever, Black Panther 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Oh, just shoot me in the head with your 3-hour runtime, you piece of crap.
It's probably going to be a 3-hour podcast. It's got you, me, David, and Alexis on there, so hooray. All right, that's all for me. Thanks. I'm driving. Robert Winfree. I'm going to go pee. You do your plugs.
All right. I cover professional wrestling, which is only marginally more comical than American politics. I cover that a few nights a week. AW's Dark Elevation on Monday, MLW on Thursday, WWE SmackDown on Friday. So my latest episode of AEW is up now. Again, MLW will come out on Thursday, and then SmackDown on Friday as they start gearing up for whatever's next. What is next? Survivor Series will be next. / War Games / whatever the heck they're going to call it. So be on the lookout for that if you're so inclined. I cover mixed martial arts, mostly the UFC in the MMA zone of 411mania.com. This coming Saturday is UFC 281. They're back in Madison Square Garden. We've got 2 title fights and a great lightweight fight between Michael Chandler and Dustin Poirier. That will be fireworks. If you want a full preview of that particular card, I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast on Sundays. This last week is predominantly a preview of UFC 281, plus news of the week and a review of last week's show, which, it existed. So that's where you can find me. I already mentioned it a little bit, but Thursday, a couple of days from now, I will be on the TV party for the Netflix show that is Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. That should be a fun little discussion. I, for the most part, enjoyed it. So so that particular anthology series, we'll be reviewing it. Should be a good time. So tune in for that if you feel so inclined. If you're only interested in politics, Mark occasionally does the Whiskey Rebellion. I think he does it once a month now. Yes?
Yeah, once a month.
So be on the lookout for the next time he can offend everyone as much as humanly possible in the space of 2 hours.
That is the goal.
And you are very good at it.
All right, folks. Thank you for tuning into our election coverage. For Robert Winfree, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.